Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I want to thank you all for joining us this week as we continue our explorations of horror films from all different types of decades and genres. Because this week we have a special episode. A special episode. I say they're all special episodes because to me they actually are. But for this week we are doing a found footage film, which a lot of you know I love this genre, and we're doing a film that I really enjoy, which is Barry Levinson's The Bay. If you're not familiar with this film, I'm not surprised. This film kind of went under the radar, so there's a lot of people who are not familiar with this found footage film, but it is one of the better found footage films, in my opinion. But we will get to opinions about this film in this episode as I have a conversation with Sarah Panazzo this week about the film, and we're going to get into just how good or not so good this film might actually be. So thank you, Panazzo, for joining us.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for making me watch this wonderful movie again.
You can hear the joy in her voice, everyone, in regards to how much she absolutely loves this movie. But to get everyone started, because I know that you have some misgivings about this film, I do want to know your first impressions of this film.
My first impressions were the same every time I've watched it, is I absolutely hate this movie. I don't do like creepy crawlies, millipedes, centipedes, cockroaches very well at all. And this movie just is disgusting. I normally can do like body horror, but this is just too realistic and gross. That being said, it is one of my favorites just because of the content and how well done it is. But yeah, I absolutely hate this movie.
So for me, I like this movie for a different reason. One, because I love aquatic horror. So doing a found footage aquatic horror film was a big draw for me. And the second is it's a Barry Levinson film. So I was really surprised that Barry Levinson was going to delve into both the found footage genre and a horror film at that. I mean, he's mostly known for political films. Like some of you may not have remember this film, but I absolutely love this film, which is Wag the Dog, which he produced. And of course, he was the director of Rain Man, which everyone should know about. But I like the fact that he likes to take these subject matters that are a little bit, I guess, topical. I guess is the best way to describe Rain Man and Wag the Dog, because Rain Man has to deal with someone with a mental forget what the mental disability, but I forget what they called it. Was it I can't remember exactly.
I can't remember, but I mean, Good Morning Vietnam too. I
Good,
mean,
Good Morning Vietnam.
he covers a lot of stuff. And actually, the first time I watched this, I was like, I know this name. Who the hell is this guy? And why did he make this disgusting movie?
It was surprising. It kind of came out of nowhere. I was like, huh? Barry
It,
Levinson?
it actually didn't. So he grew up in Maryland, and right, what was it, the year or two before this,
Mm-hmm.
was when they had the major fish and bird deaths like everywhere on the East Coast. So they actually had, I think it was over 2 million fish
Oh.
died in the Chesapeake Bay, which is where he's based. Um, and so he was asked to produce a documentary about it and all the problems that it faces. And so he did a ton of research, and then he found out that another like news outlet, I think it was Frontline, had already covered it before he had time to finish.
Mm.
He was still so passionate about it originally that he was like, I still want to do something with this. And what better way than to show it through the natural horrors that it is? The most horrific part of this is that 80% of the movie is factual. And the symptoms they show for some of the stuff, all of the like essential science is all real. And that's why I hate this movie, is because it is a real monster. It's a
Yeah, when
couple
I
of real monsters.
Yeah, I realized that too after I first seen the film. I had read about it because I had to know why he did this movie, and I didn't know about the fact that where he lived, and that influenced the reason that he made the movie. But I did research the all the factual type stuff. I was like, holy shit, this shit is real. Oh,
Yeah, the fact that they name like the scientific like everything, the bacterias, the creatures that they reveal, everything is scientific and real.
mm,
Um, some of the stuff that I had to look up where there's like the 2.5 foot long isopod
mm,
uh is really funny because the version that they mention is cousins to the giant isopod, I believe it's called. I
mm.
think that's just the general name is the giant isopod. And they get like ridiculously huge.
Yeah, they get ridiculous. I know which one you were referring to too, because I actually read a little bit about that as well. I was like, Jesus Christ, it was a little bit more disturbing. He just takes it to a little bit a more grander level, obviously, but like you said, the story behind it is 100% real. Which
Yeah.
inspired them, which is like you said, one of the reasons why the whole film as a whole kind of feels a little bit more realistic and plays into the found footage type of thing, if you want to call it found footage, because one of the great things about the film is that it's not like one person's perspective. This is a found footage film. It's a bunch of footage from a bunch of different characters, and you never know what's going to happen to any of them because you're just the footage has just been cobbled together in a narrative way, and some people die. It's a horrible deaths, and some people don't, and then some people you have no idea what happens to them because we just don't see any more footage of them. So that was refreshing. Not to watch a found footage that's completely by one person's perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was really interesting because I think he said that like a third of the videotaping was just him handing objects to actors, whether it was like Skype set up on a phone,
Mm-hmm.
digital cameras, and they got over 20 different kinds of digital cameras, so everything would look different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did that really well. I think the only part they really used actual cameras for is the main blog crew with the news reporter, Donna. But it works really well.
I agree with you. I was thinking that when I was rewatching it, I was like, "Oh man, this could have gone so badly with so many different types of footage that was being used to record this." And I was like, "But you know, Barry Levinson is a professional. He's done some major
Yeah.
films out there, so this whole the feeling of the film is both I guess informative as well as it has a narrative story that flows from beginning and end because you're following the reporter for a good bit of it, but you know, it's not
Yeah.
one perspective.
I do appreciate the back and forth of the oceanographers where they
Mm,
don't reveal everything too early and it kind of reveals itself as the movie progresses
yes.
because then you start seeing the minor symptoms to the severe symptoms to the deadly symptoms and going back to the realness of it like those are all real symptoms of what would happen. So like the one is flesh-eating disease, which 1 in 5 people who get it end up dying. And like they can amputate whatever they want and it just keeps going. Um, but yeah, even the whole isopod like eating tongues thing, apparently they do not have a taste for human flesh, but it is just for fish. And it's even worse because they
Disturbing,
cut
yes.
uh it's just so gross.
Yeah, yeah, it's a body horror to the extreme, which is also something you don't expect from Barry Levinson.
No, this is the only horror movie he's ever done. And like I said, it's a real world horror, which I appreciate because these like eco horrors we've
Mhm.
started getting have ended up being really well done. Like I look at The Last of Us where you get that zombie mushroom, the zombie fungus that's been infecting ants, and it's like what happens if that gets to people?
Mhm.
Um, I mean, we keep getting like the day after tomorrow and all of like the apocalyptic ends, but like having something like this where it's like this is a real world problem that we are facing. How can it get out of proportion?
Yeah. Well, this one starts off as kind of them polluting the water to such an extreme that it mutates the creatures
Uh,
are
yeah.
the I want to say arthropods, but
Isopods.
isopod. See, I didn't want to say the wrong word because I knew I was about to say the wrong one. Isopod.
Yeah, they're a parasitic isopod. I ended up looking at way too many pictures of it, and actually to show how big the problems were. So like the nuclear reactor leak is real in the Chesapeake Bay, and then them dumping all the chicken fecal matter
Mhm.
into the bay is also a big thing. So they are seeing those issues. Fact in point, when they take that fish off of the boat and they start finding the isopods behind the gills, that is a fish they actually caught while they were filming to show it. That was not fake with the giant isopods they pulled out. They have gotten bigger. I mean, clearly not as big as the ones inside, but they still have gotten bigger and it's ended up being an issue. And he wanted to, they say multiple times throughout the movie that 40% of the bay is dead.
Mhm.
I didn't have the heart to look up how dead it is now, over a decade later. Uh, but
How old this movie is? I didn't realize.
2012? Yeah.
Wow. I, you know what? It did not dawn on me how that a whole more than a decade has passed since this movie was
Yeah.
released.
I had to think about it because the opening scene with all of the news articles, the real news articles of all the fish and birds dying, I was like, God, when was that? It feels like it was only like 4 or 5 years ago. But that was like a huge thing for a long time, is just the massive amount of death that we had.
Hmm. So, woo! So, so we're gonna get into some of the more technical aspects because I already wanted to start about that in terms of the different filmmaking there. Do you think that that was very effective? Because I know a lot of people are used to the found footage films like Blair Witch Project, where you're following three people, or you're watching Cloverfield, where you're following a handful of people, or or even Paranormal Activity films, where you're following two or three people. But this one right here is one of the rarities where it follows a bunch of different people and it cuts back and forth between all of the different characters and story elements. It focuses more on the progression, in my opinion, the progression of
Hmm.
this disease than it does the characters, except for the reporter. How do you think? Do you think that was a very effective way of telling this type of story? Because I haven't seen it done again like this in so
Yeah, I haven't either. Everything ends up being like when you look at like Deborah Logan and you look at all the paranormal activities, everything is very linear.
long.
But this is actually played a lot closer to a real documentary. Like when you go on Netflix and watch them now, you get the back and forth of time periods to show how things play into each other, with a grand reveal tending to be at the end.
Mhm.
You get the people who are live commenting after the fact, and then you get the clips of what's going on during, which is what this one does really well. It really does. Um, it does move the story forward without revealing too much
Yeah,
all at once.
yeah, it keeps you. It's surprising that it keeps you in suspense, and it does retain what I like to say about Paranormal Activity. Or at least the first couple. It keeps this natural suspense from beginning to end. So it doesn't ever seem like it's formulaic or staged. There's a
Yeah.
better word for it than staged, but when I rewatched it, I was noticing the differences from watching that and watching like Paranormal Activity, which we did a show just earlier for, and I forget the other found footage film we just did one for too. And it didn't feel like either one of those because those were more linear, but with Paranormal Activity, the way that the suspense is built is over time and it feels more realistic. So
Yeah, like I appreciate that there are the multiple characters in this. You're not just focusing on one person. I know Donna kind of leads the whole thing and is the main person revealing most of this information, but like they make you care about so many different characters, like the doctor in the ER, or the couple with the baby who are just trying to get over to watch the fireworks and end up on an empty pier. I mean, watching even just the dash cam footage from the cops, that whole
oh
scene
yeah.
where the partner goes into the house is just, ugh,
I had
there's so many
forgotten about that
things.
one.
Yeah, I did too. Like I remembered like the phone call, the hidden phone calls they revealed during the entire thing, or like all the people they find all over town. but yeah, there's some really heavy scenes, especially when the CDC is like abandon all hope.
Hmm.
It's like what do you do in these situations? I mean, especially with COVID in 2020, where we had kind of a similar thing where you had multiple people like packed into ERs, and it's like we don't know what to do at this point.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, it's a
it's
great parallel there. I didn't even think about that until now when you mentioned that.
yeah, it's eerie. Um, and then you get all the other stuff of like people being stupid and they're like, if you don't want to catch a disease in the water, don't go in the water. Otherwise, enjoy your 4th of July.
Yes, yes, I do remember that. But one of the things that that you brought up that I wanted to think about, and I know I'm jumping ahead a lot, is
Yeah,
the couple with the baby. By the time, and they're completely oblivious to everything that's going on until they show up on that pier, and everything is like there's no
it's a
fireworks.
ghost
It's a
town.
ghost town. And that is a very that's a uh, that's a very disturbing scene that needs to be in there. That whole sequence. I won't say scene because it's a bunch of scenes. Sequence. But it's also the sequence that actually has some of the more gruesome aspects to it because these couple that's completely oblivious to whatever's going on are suddenly seeing all the bloody mayhem. I like to say,
Yeah.
bloody mayhem that has arisen on this little small seaside town that has been driven into chaos because of a polluted water system and these disease and bugs at the same time. So
Well, and like you watch them like they're put in pretty early in the film and it's just like okay, to a couple with the baby and then you get to the point like past the midway park where he's swimming in the water. He's like, "Oh, I got some in my mouth." And you're sitting there like waiting for something to happen. But it's actually funny that you bring them up more is because that's how he had the original idea for the movie. He was like, what if I just have these two people show up on the pier? But then how do you get there? And he was like, I can't just have these two main characters just arrive there at the tail end of it. We've got to explain more of what happened.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how it progressed from a documentary to starring these two who ended up being like the top cast on IMDb ahead of everybody else in the movie. And then you get to the actual final movie of this amazing documentary.
Yeah, yeah. So that I don't know how I don't know if you have any favorite bug movies, but I'm pretty sure that now that you've told me how much you love bugs from this film, we might have to do a favorite bug movie. The thing is, bug movies are entertaining for me, so that could be why I don't get nearly as creeped out by the Bay. But it's interesting for me to see the reaction of such a movie from someone like you who does, because I know 100% that like spider movies, which are kind of like the cheap bug movie out there that
Yeah.
you can't stand, a lot of people just hate those type of movies. My wife, one of them, can't stand spy movies. I keep telling her we should sit down and watch the new movie Sting, and she refuses to see it with me.
I need to see it, but after watching Eight-Legged Freaks, I mean, I can't. I've gotten much better with spiders. It's mostly just the like multiple legs. And my one friend was like, "But you can just imagine all of them tap dancing." And I'm like, "That's the problem is they have too many legs." So no.
Oh, the isopods in this movie are kind of
Ugh.
crazy too. But I enjoy bug movies to a point. I get a little bit squeamish with cockroach movies, and I did feel that way a little bit with this one. But because it was the aquatic movie, it didn't hit me the same way. And for everyone listening out there, the movie The Nest. I think the '80s version of the movie called The Nest, because I am familiar that there are a couple other movies out there called The Nest, but this one was about the cockroaches. Is always the one bug movie that gets me every time. I know it's a cheesy '80s horror movie, but I was like, oh, ugh,
No,
I
can't
can't
do it.
stand it. But this movie, and I think that's, I don't know. Did you look up? Did this movie even do well at the box office at all?
No, not at all. They had a budget of 2 million and they only made 1.6.
Okay, because I just remember it coming and going really fast, and I didn't have a chance to see it at the theater, so I saw it when it was released on DVD slash Blu-ray.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
it was on streaming for me, I think the first time I watched it. I can't remember where.
hmm,
Um, but yeah, I a lot of people don't talk about this one.
they
It's one of
don't.
those mockumentaries, especially the found footage, that a lot of people don't refer to, and it's actually really well done. It's
Yeah.
also just disgusting. I mean, looking at the cover, I don't want to pick it up and watch it.
You know what? I was looking at the poster for this, and it is pretty disturbing with it almost
Hmm.
the X-ray type picture of the skull with a freaking isopod coming out the mouth.
Well,
Um,
no, Kevin, it's not coming out of the mouth. It's replacing the tongue because that's what they do in real life. They cut off the tongue,
you know, you're
cut off all
absolutely
the,
right. It is with
yeah, they cut off the blood circulation of the tongue till it falls off, and then they replace the tongue and eat all the food the fish will eat.
so I'm glad you said that to everyone and not me. So, but that poster is very effective in my opinion. But
Yeah,
it was a movie that came and went really fast. Now, it's a shame. It's a shame. I also think that it did come in at the tail end of the found footage
most
like
definitely.
yeah. And so there's a lot of people out there who just kind of dismissed it altogether. That's a shame, and we wish that more people would be talking about this film because you know, we are working through a lot of found footage films here at Conversations in Horror. And so this one right here represents, in my opinion, one of the better ones for people to watch if you are just getting into the found footage genre, or you need one to appreciate and watch. It's actually good. Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad found footage films out there, just like there are of any other genre out there. But for some reason, found footage films get a bigger bad rap. Um, I think it's mostly because people think it's easy to make a found footage film, and you can just take your little bitty camera out there and shoot it. I think that's the reason why we have so many bad ones out there. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. There's it's so oversaturated with found footage films. Everybody decides they want to do one based on one kind of mythology or another. One you go to like Blair Witch or the Jersey Devil
Mm,
or just all of the above. I mean, they're very easy to pull off, but they're not very easy to be well done.
mm,
Um, because yeah, like even like Paranormal Activity, you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, we're watching the same thing over and over again. And their most genius thing, I think, was in number two, where they've got the oscillating fan going back and
mhm.
forth. And that entire thing is just genius. And actually being like, okay, what would they have done in this time period to make it work? Because nowadays you're like, oh, well, I'll just click and adjust where my camera points or whatever else. Um, but yeah, I mean, we got really oversaturated for a while with uh Paranormal Activity. And I mean, everybody and their mother had to do a found footage film. And so now we rarely get them anymore, I want to say. Like, I honestly can't remember the last found footage film I watched that was in the last like 5 or 6 years. I think Deadstream might actually be the only one that I've seen.
I still need to see it. That was on my list, but I did see the new Hell House LLC Origins movie.
Oh, I don't count that one. No.
You don't count that one?
No, it was not good. I love Hell House 1. Yeah. The new one is basically just a repeat. Uh,
It is.
it
And it
really
got
is.
worse. It started off like it would be interesting. It
Yeah.
started off like maybe 15, 20 minutes, maybe. And then it devolved really fucking fast.
Yeah.
I was
But
like,
no, the first one is another one that has especially scared me and made me feel more uncomfortable than any other horror movie because even under the covers, you are not safe. Um, but no, like this was also going back a little bit what you said, like it was a little early for eco horror too, where like we've now really gotten into like global warming and climate change and it being important. I mean we've had like older ones like Girl with All the Gifts, Jurassic Park, Jaws, Book of Eli, The Road, Outbreak, Contagion. But now these newer ones that they're coming out with are all really interesting. Like I said, The Last of Us is beyond one of my favorites because it's just a fascinating subject in the first place. But then you get like uh Annihilation,
Yep.
where that's going to be more of an eco horror. And I'm interested to see people start doing more of these more realistic ones where it's like Don't Look Up. That was an awful movie to come out during COVID and during all of the political issues. Um, Such a good movie, but it is so hard to watch. Um, but this is kind of the same. You see that government trying to push forward their own things, making money and hiding things from the public and at the cost of the public,
Yeah.
which is a real world issue now. And we're seeing more and more and more of it.
I am wanting to. I'm going to bring up what you were just talking about with eco horror, and I was trying to remember the movie. This one does not seem to be the right one, but it's supposed to be the right one. La, 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 la. I enjoy eco horror, but you're right. We don't get enough of it, and I think until now, I think with global
Mhm.
warming and everything, people are using that as a means to tell a lot of different eco horror type story. Give me 1 second. I am trying. Where the hell is it? The Last Winter. Jesus. Oh, The Last Winter, which came out in 2006, was another eco horror that I really enjoyed. From director Larry Fessenden. I couldn't remember the name of it. I just remember the whole movie, and he is always trying to integrate some of that in a lot of his horror films. And there's not many directors who do that on a constant basis. You know what? When I think of Jurassic Park, I think of science, mad scientists gone bad.
Yeah.
But when you think about the Jurassic World, it is definitely an eco horror type of movie
Yeah.
when becomes a global epidemic.
But I mean, even going back as far as Godzilla, I mean,
mm,
he was the first personified nuclear war,
mm,
which at that time was their eco terror.
yeah.
So it's interesting how it's changed over time. I mean, even just looking at somehow they say Deliverance is an eco horror movie. I don't get it, but
Really?
okay.
Okay.
I get Jaws because it's like that man versus nature. But yeah, lately there haven't been a lot.
Geez, I keep watching. You know what? Most of the ones I think you're right. I think most of the ones that we normally associate with eco horror have to do with the post-apocalyptic type of movies where it's an apocalyptic world, and this is what happens after we destroyed it. It's essentially the basis for The Wandering Earth, if you've seen those movies, where we have destroyed the Earth, and now we have destroyed we haven't destroyed the Earth, but we more or less destroyed the Earth, and now the sun's dying. We've destroyed the Earth enough, and we're moving the Earth to a new solar system. Of course, if you watch this first movie, they don't get there. It's just a long journey that will take a fucking century to get there. But essentially, we are trying to find a way out of our eco horror type of problems, and films are, I guess, the easiest. I can't say the easiest way because I've been reading a lot of eco horror books as well, so it's just become something that's on a lot of filmmakers or storytellers' minds. I hope that we see more of it in film, but I think it's so sporadic when it's not a post-apocalyptic film. Like this is not a post-apocalyptic film. In fact, that they go a very long distance to make it a present problem. It is here, it is now. We need to deal with it now before it's too fucking late. Which, if you've seen the movie, you know you get to a point where there's just no saving. You give up.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of the movies I listed earlier, like Book of Eli, Snowpiercer, it's all after the fact and there's not much you can do. It's just surviving. But yeah, this is taking place right in the here and now, and
There is another one which most people are probably gonna ream me for. There is another one, which is a found footage movie called Chernobyl Diaries, which kind of deals with the
Yes.
fall of Chernobyl, and I don't know. I actually honestly don't know of anybody who actually likes the film other than me.
Honestly, I can't remember. I remember watching it, but then I watched like the real Chernobyl show afterwards on HBO, and just everything got wiped out. And I was like, this is horrific.
Well, that whole yeah, if you watch the show, the Chernobyl show, and you see the actual horror that happened, relatively speaking, and then you watch something like Chernobyl Diaries, which is they call it an extreme uh it's not extreme sport, extreme places. There's a term for when people go to places that they should not be going to, and it's almost like an extreme sport, which is essentially what they're depicting in Chernobyl Diaries. Because who the fuck wants to go to Chernobyl? Where it's still irradiated. There are
It's
parts that
not irradiated, Kevin. It's just got Godzilla in it.
well, that's where he should yeah, it should be is in a place like that. But I thought, I like these type of movies. I think it's interesting when filmmakers try and put these elements in their stories because they make them more um relevant for this day and age.
Yes.
I don't know if they play, say, 20 years from now, if they play nearly as well. This one's obviously plays pretty well. It's 10 years past when it was originally made, and it's still relevant now, because of global warming. It's so much on so many people's minds, more so now than it was when it was originally made. I think um, the director Levinson
Hmm.
took what he would, like you were telling us, he took what he was learning about at that time and incorporated it into a movie, um, without really realizing 100% all of the eco problems that we are actually facing now. I think he's probably thought about this is a problem now that we are going to be facing later. Fucking
Yeah.
shit. Uh, our seas are part of where we get most of our food supply from, and if it disappears like the way he depicted it, we're gonna have
Yeah.
a fucking problem. I know there's
Well,
places that do.
not even that, like the fact that the photoplankton have all like started disappearing, so
Mhm.
that's like one of our main sources of oxygen. Like I would be interested in a lot more films set like this where you are seeing the real world horrors
Mm,
um on a scale, but to bring notice to these things.
mhm.
Because like most people probably didn't know anything about these Chesapeake Bay things except other than seeing the images on the news.
Yeah.
So it was quite eye-opening and how much research. I mean, every single interview he did around the time he went full into the research, and I'd be interested to see what he thinks now of the movie, versus when he did it back then.
Mhm. Yeah. Huh. I don't even know what he's doing now. I would be really curious to ask other people what they thought about this film because I don't know many people personally who have told me their thoughts on this movie. This is one of the reasons why I put the film on our list for the show is because it is a film I don't hear much about. Like most of the movies, or a lot of the movies, I won't say most of the movies, a lot of the movies that we discuss here on Conversations on Horror are films that a lot of people have already seen. But every once in a while, we like to throw in a couple of films that we don't think enough people have taken notice of, and they haven't become cult films. This is not a cult film. There's not
Not
enough
at
people who have
all.
seen this film to make this a cult film. This is just a film that has, came, went, and was forgotten, and we don't want it to be forgotten.
But I
Uh,
mean, it had a lot of decent actors in it who have majorly stepped up since this movie. Um, so that was also really interesting to see as well.
mm, I can't. Ooh, this is bad of me. I don't remember any of the cast members to be honest.
Kristen Connolly, who was then in Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, okay.
She was the blonde. She's been in a lot of other stuff as well. Keith Donahue, also was in quite a few things. I think mostly now she does like voiceover work.
Okay.
Because she's on like Star Trek Lower Decks and
Oh,
Tuca and Birdie, a bunch of other stuff. So I recognized her from You're the Worst. I didn't even realize it was her. Never put two and two together until I recently looked at her IMDb. But no, I mean, like a lot of these people ended up going on to do stuff. The Doctor ended up going on to lead a show, I want to say. Um,
He did look familiar to me. You're right.
yeah, Stephen Kunkin. He's on Handmaid's Tale, Billions.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's a weird stepping stone that nobody seems to remember. And for the worse, like I said, I absolutely despise this movie because of the content, but I love this movie and how well done it is.
Yeah, and I will add to everyone who's listening that a lot of major stars get their stepping stones from horror movies.
They do.
There are a lot of bad ones. We can all just mention, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4 with Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, or I can mention Critters 3 with Leonardo DiCaprio. But that's pretty much how people get started because, people don't really take notice of these low budget horror films sometimes, and some of them, like The Bay, gets lost in the mix. But someone out there saw these actors as talent to foster that talent, and we're kind of glad that they are in these type of movies to start their careers off. I think The Bay is a great movie that will be much more remembered, hopefully, and will garner a big cult following in the future. I don't think there's ever going to be a cult following for Critters 3 or so just tell you out there, I don't think there's ever going to be a following for that movie. And I was shocked to find out that there's actually a following for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, that piece of shit movie. But that being said, I am glad that we're talking about The Bay and found footage films. I do believe that they are both not talked about in high regards in this day and age. It's like talking about a Saw movie. If I talk to any normal person about a Saw movie, they says, I saw the first two. Aren't they all the same? Yeah. They're like in Saw number 11 or something now. But the thing is, after a while, everyone just thinks that all found footages are the same, and they end up having really bad endings, which is the one reason why so many people, I believe, hate found footage movies. They have these endings that just kind of end abruptly, and people get pissed off at that. And so they get the genre as a whole gets a bad rap, I believe. This one, on the other hand, because it's told from so many different perspectives, you get endings at different parts of the film, and then you get a ending for the ecological part of the story at the very end, which is why I think it surpasses a lot of the cheaper found footage films out there. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. Found footage is really great. I mean, from the start of Blair Witch, where they basically started making it as they went, to stuff like this, where you can turn a bunch of real information into a found footage documentary. There's a lot of good stuff that can be covered, and unfortunately, like you said, nobody seems to be taking it too seriously.
No one does. I think as popular as Paranormal Activity was, it did. I don't, even though it's, the whole franchise is really successful, I don't think it has nearly as big an impact as the Blair Witch Project did.
No.
Unfortunately, those sequels were really bad, whereas Paranormal Activities are up and down in terms of quality. But I do believe that the audience reactions to something like Blair Witch Project, which people thought was real when it was originally released, is very similar to something that could have happened with The Bay, in which they pulled a lot from that is realistic. I think those are the aspects of both the films that make them, or not only make them worth watching and really well done films, but also make them films that people can enjoy on repeat viewings, and I hope become cult films. Like, you can't call Blair Witch a cult film; it was fucking popular. It was, if anyone bothers to say Book of Shadows Blair Witch 2 is a cult film, they might get shot. But other than that, that's kind of like where I'm leaning towards the Bay. I'm really hope that more people see it. I really hope more people get to experience it and appreciate it for what it is and what it does for the genre, even if they do hate creepy crawly bugs and body horror. uh, what about you, Panazzo?
I was actually just reminded that this is very eerily similar to what was the original radio show that scared everybody because everyone thought it was real.
Oh, the War of the Worlds?
Yeah, so War of the Worlds as the original radio show, if you would have just turned on TNT and saw this, not having watched from the beginning and thinking
Oh.
this is a thing, it could have very well scared a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they ever did air it on TV because I don't think any of that would be rated correctly for television.
Yeah, but you know what? To bring up another found footage film that I'll be talking with later on the show, which is Ghost Watch, which a lot of people didn't know was fake when it aired when it first aired in the UK. And it so many people thought it was real that it caused a little panic there in the UK. I don't know if you've seen Ghost Watch or not.
I haven't. I need to watch it.
Yeah, I think it was Nate, our special guest host, Nate, reminded me that I hadn't seen it, and I think it's on Shudder.
It's on something because it keeps
It is.
popping up, and I was gonna watch it.
So I finally
'Cause,
sat down and
yeah.
watched it. Yeah, it's still effective even to this day, even though it's aged. It's still effective as a television program, which is how it is arranged. Kind of like what's the recent one? Talk Show with the Devil. Is it,
Late
not
Night with the Devil.
Late Night with the Devil, which is very much like the whole thing's like a talk show.
Yes.
And that's exactly how Ghost Watch is, and so it's very effective. Found footage, really. I guess it's the best genre to put in found footage.
I think so.
Yeah. Unaired footage is probably more like it is. But yes, that I believe those type of films will be, and Late Night with the Devil did extremely well and was extremely popular, and I'm really glad it was because it's a really effective movie, and I hope that we see more films delve into stuff like that in the future. That's that film works on so many levels. And it's not a found footage. Sorry guys, it kind of goes through a huge little. It almost looks like an expose with a television show thrown in the way it's framed. But I think that was brilliant. I think that's a great idea.
Yes.
So, any final thoughts about The Bay, other than it's this disgusting movie with the parasites that eat people's tongues and the flesh-eating virus that only 1 out of 5 people survive out of?
If you are squeamish, don't watch this movie. If you are eating food, don't watch this movie. Otherwise, be ready to hold your stomach a couple times because I'm normally not one to have my stomach churn, but during this movie, I did multiple times. But yeah, it's a great movie. Learn about the environment.
Oh my god. I am looking forward to more eco horror out there. I think The Bay I recommend that high on my list of eco horror type movies out there. Same with The Last Winter. I think those are two extreme great examples of this. It's done a lot on small scale. Even at the X-Files did a couple of eco horrors within their framework. I think it's a story element that should be explored more, especially in found footage, because I think that if you explore that, you will create stories that seem more realistic and much more and scarier for the audience participant, which I think is the hallmark of any good found footage film. I think when your audience thinks it's real or it could be real, they are more ingrained in the story you're trying to tell. They're more entertained, somewhat, or they're going to enjoy it much more. So I think The Bay does that. I think Barry Levinson hit it out of the park with this film. It's a shame that it did not get seen by a bigger audience on its theatrical release, but I think it fits better on television anyways, because that's the type of film it is. It's literally, lots of home video footage and television broadcast. So I think it fits find on television. So I hope that by listening to this conversation, all of you out there will go out there and see The Bay if you've never seen it before. And if you have, check it out again with this new insight. I believe that if you are willing to take a leap of faith for this body horror found footage film, even if you hate found footage films, I think you will find something to enjoy in this film. With that, I am glad we did this conversation. Thank you, Panaso. We will delve more into more found footage films because we have a lot on our plate because we were asked a whole list of found footage films to do, and so we're going to eventually get around to them. So you never know what's going to show up here on our show, but I do want to thank you for joining us. I want you to go out there and subscribe and like our podcast on all the major podcast apps out there, which mostly pertains to Spotify and YouTube, but you can find it on a lot of different places. Check out our sister podcast, Conversations for Color, on our Patreon page, and also make sure to check out all the previous episodes we've done on all the other cult films, found footage films, and every other type of film out there that we hope you will see and enjoy. So thank you for joining us at Conversation in Horror, everyone, and have a great day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.